You are listening to STR, the Sandy Times Radio, culture, music, and beyond.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Canvas of Crimes by the Sandy Times. This is the true crime podcast that isn't really about true crime, at least not in the way you are used to. No serial killers, no bloody crime scenes. Instead, we are talking about the art world. My name is Alexandra Mancia, I'm the senior editor in the Sandy Times, and today we are talking about a very specific kind of theft. What happens when the thief doesn't break in from the outside, but is already inside? Someone you would never suspect, someone who knows the routines, the schedules, the blind spots, someone whose job is to protect masterpieces and who already has access, authority, and a key. Yes, today we are talking about museum workers, curators, archivists, researchers, all this, let's say, trusted stuff. The people meant to guard cultural heritage, but at some point, they cross the line and become the thieves. Let's start with, I suppose, one of the most famous art thefts in history, the theft of Mona Lisa. In 1911, Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa disappeared from the Louvre, triggering a full-blown international scandal. And honestly, the painting became a global celebrity not just because of Da Vinci's genius, but because it vanished. At the time, suspicion fell on everyone. Spies, diplomats, artists, even Pablo Picasso was questioned. For 2 years, La Gioconda was simply gone, without a trace. Then, on December 2nd, 1913, a Florentine art dealer was offered a painting attributed to Leonardo da Vinci. The seller was arrested immediately. So, who was the thief? A 30-year-old Italian glazier named Vincenzo Peruggia. Peruggia worked at the Louvre and had been hired to build a protective glass case for the painting. One morning, when the gallery was empty, he lifted the painting off the wall, carried it to a stairwell, removed the canvas from its frame, slipped it under his work smock, and walked out. I mean, the most famous artwork in the world carried out under a work smock? By the way, his motive was pretty patriotic. Peruggia later claimed he wanted to return the painting to Italy, believing it had been stolen by Napoleon a century earlier. Now let's jump forward more than a century. In 2023, the British Museum admitted that around 2,000 objects like ancient jewelry and precious gemstones had gone missing from its collection. And once again, this wasn't an external break-in. The suspect was a senior curator, someone trusted, someone who had unrestricted access to basically everything. He had been stealing from the museum since around 2016. So what did he do with this ancient jewelry? He sold it on eBay for £40. And why did no one notice they were gone? The thing is, many of these objects weren't fully catalogued. Some hadn't been physically checked for years. The scandal led to resignations, investigations, and a very public reckoning. And what this shows us is simple. Sometimes the biggest weakness isn't security, it's trust. Oh, and I almost forgot about this one. This case isn't about paintings, it's about maps and books. It happened in Spain in 2014 at the National Library. One of its most important items, an original copy of Sidereus Nuncius by Galileo, valued at around 800,000 euros, turned out not to be original anymore. At some point, it had been swept for a copy, and this was noticed almost by accident during a restoration program. Restorers realized something was off. After Sidereus Nuncius was identified as a forgery, investigators started looking at who had accessed the original before it disappeared. And one of the very few people on that list was someone calling himself Cesar Ovidio Gomez Rivero. Gomez Rivero posed as a researcher in order to gain access to the library and its rare books. But here is the part that makes this case especially uncomfortable. The library realized that Galileo's work was fake in 2014, but the theft wasn't reported to the police until 2018. For 4 years, the forged copy stayed in the catalog as if it were the original. The situation only escalated after outside researchers started asking a very simple question. If this is a copy, where is the original? So why do these thefts happen at all? Surely, museums have alarms, guards, and cameras, and in theory they do. But in practice, how effective those systems are really depends on the institution. There is a long-running joke that museum security still relies on tiny teams and outdated systems, and unfortunately, it's not really a joke. Security experts and museum insiders keep pointing to the same issue over and over again. Too much access and not enough oversight. In many institutions, staff and sometimes even interns can move through collections and internal database with surprisingly little monitoring, which means something small can disappear without triggering any alerts. And if no one is actively checking, it can stay unnoticed for years. And this isn't just a theory. In 2025, a major heist at the Louvre took less than 7 minutes. I'm pretty sure you remember that. Priceless historical jewelry was stolen, exposing serious blind spots even in one of the most famous museums in the world. So when experts talk about the problem, it's rarely about walls or locks. It's about scale, huge collections, incomplete catalogs, and systems that rely more on trust than verification. That's why museums are now debating upgrades, from smarter inventory tracking to AI-assisted surveillance, because prestige doesn't equal protection.